There's this brutal, almost predictable pattern that just echoes through all of history. I've come to think of it as the curse of the number two.
We're always obsessed with the big guy, right? The number one, and when they're finally going to fall. But that's not the real story. The real story, the one that repeats over and over again, is what happens to the challenger, the one who is supposed to take over.
Think about it. We all just assume the number two will step up and inherit the throne. But history, it tells a much, much darker story. The truth is, when the number one finally falls, the number two usually gets completely destroyed right along with it. Their whole world, it just vanishes.
And this isn't just random chaos, not at all. It's like there's a hidden blueprint, a set of like 5 unbreakable rules that seem to govern these rivalries, whether we're talking about ancient empires or modern-day companies.
So here's how it seems to work. First, the challenger, the number two, can only exist inside the arena that the number one built. Their rivalry becomes so huge it defines the entire era. But here's the kicker. When the leader starts to fade, that whole world, their whole epoch, collapses. The number two, who spent everything becoming the perfect player in that specific game, well, they're too specialized. They can't adapt, and they fail right alongside the leader. And that's the moment some new power, someone you never saw coming, emerges from the outside to build a completely new game.
And look, this isn't some new idea I just came up with. This is basically a ghost story that's been playing out for over 3,000 years.
You can just see this cycle repeat with this brutal consistency, from the Bronze Age all the way to the Age of Empires.
Okay, let's go way back. Take the Bronze Age. For centuries, Egypt was the superpower, no question. Their number two, the Hittite Empire. These guys were a total military machine, and the two of them were basically locked in a Cold War. So when their world finally collapsed, you'd think the Hittites would take over, right? Nope. They just vanished, completely wiped from the pages of history.
All right, fast forward a few centuries. Now you've got Rome and Persia. They fought what was essentially a forever war that completely defined their world. But as Rome started to weaken, did Persia take its place? Of course not. Instead, this new force came out of nowhere, from the periphery, the Islamic caliphates. They just swept in, wiped Persia completely off the map, and crippled what was left of the Roman Empire.
And this pattern, it just keeps going, right into the modern era. You had Great Britain ruling the world and Germany rising up to challenge them. That rivalry, it explodes into World War I. And the result? Well, Germany was crushed, Britain was mortally wounded. And who stepped up? A power from the periphery that mostly sat out the devastation, the United States. And they went on to build the next world order.
Okay, so right now you're probably thinking, this is all just ancient history, right? Empires and armies? But what's fascinating is that the exact same pattern plays out in the world of business. The battlefield just changes from deserts and battle lines to boardrooms and balance sheets. The story, though, it's identical.
I mean, from the very first massive corporate empires to the big energy wars of the 19th century, all the way up to the phones we literally had in our pockets just a decade or so ago, this pattern is just inescapable.
Let's start with the first real multinational corporations, the British and Dutch East India Companies. I mean, these guys were so powerful they had their own armies. It's wild. But did one end up beating the other? No. The entire idea of a company acting like a state just became obsolete. The whole game changed, and both of them were just dissolved.
You see the same thing in the energy sector. For a while, whale oil was the dominant fuel source, and then coal oil rose up to challenge it. But when petroleum was discovered, it didn't just pick a winner between the two. It made their entire competition totally irrelevant, and a new power, Standard Oil, came in and built a brand new world.
And then there's the one we all definitely remember. Nokia was the undisputed king, number one. BlackBerry was the cool, up-and-coming number two challenger, and they were fighting tooth and nail over who could make the best phone. But then Apple comes along and introduces the iPhone, which wasn't a phone, it was a pocket computer, and they created a totally new arena. In that new world, both Nokia and BlackBerry were just wiped out. Not by each other, but by outsiders who weren't even playing their game to begin with.
So, okay, all this history, from ancient empires to modern corporations, it all brings us to the single biggest global rivalry of our time. And the big question is, does the curse apply here too?
It's pretty wild. When you map those 5 rules onto the US-China relationship, the pattern fits with, frankly, chilling precision. Think about it. China's incredible rise happened inside the American-built global arena. Their rivalry now defines pretty much everything. But that same rivalry is now threatening the very globalized system that both of them depend on.
And if that system collapses, well, the pattern warns us that China, having become so perfectly specialized for this game, might not be able to adapt to a new one.
And that right there, that's the core warning. It's the big takeaway for any challenger, in any field. The real trap isn't losing. It's pouring every last bit of your energy into winning a game just as the rules are about to be completely rewritten from scratch.
So, does this mean every single challenger is just doomed to completely vanish? Well, not exactly. History shows there's a little bit of a nuance here. The outcome isn't always total, annihilation.
You see, some powers, like the Hittites or BlackBerry, they get annihilated. Their whole model just becomes worthless overnight. But others, like, say, ancient Egypt or even IBM, they suffer a different fate, irrelevance. They survive the collapse, sure, but they're just minor players in someone else's new game.
And you could argue that's an even more profound outcome. They're not dead. They're just no longer running the game. They become spectators in an arena they once completely dominated.
Which brings us to one last really crucial question. If this historical pattern holds true, what should we actually be watching for right now?
History seems to be telling us that the most important question isn't who's going to win the current game. It's not about whether the number 2 will finally beat the number 1. The real question is, who's building the next one? We should be looking to the periphery, away from all the noise of the main fight, to see who is quietly building a brand new arena. Because whoever builds that new game, they're the ones who are going to define our future.